When building security said they'd call the police if Ryan didn't stop pounding on my door, I knew the boy who made me pay $347 to be dumped was finally about to pay for everything. The first time the police threatened to call Ryan on me because he wouldn't stop pounding on my door, I thought my heart was going to burst through my chest. I stood there in my tiny living room, back pressed against the cold apartment wall, counting the seconds between his furious knocks and the hollow echo of his voice shouting my name. He'd always had a talent for filling a room with his presence, but hearing him in the hallway, drunk, angry, unpredictable, was a different kind of terror. My hands trembled so badly that the phone nearly slipped from my grasp when I dialed building security. Somewhere inside me, a voice whispered that I never should have answered his text at the restaurant, never should have allowed him to become a story I would one day need to survive. It was the rawest moment of my life, and yet it was also the moment I realized I deserved better than a man who used me as a prop in his grand performance. It's strange to start a story in the middle of your own nightmare, but that night in my apartment, the banging, the shouting, the taste of fear in the back of my throat, was the culmination of 2 years of slow-burning humiliation. A few hours earlier, I had sat at his parents' dining table, the entire family looking on as I spooned buttery mashed potatoes onto my plate and smiled through Ryan's lies about promotions and corner offices. He had been desperate to impress, weaving a tale of corporate triumphs that would have made more sense in a sitcom than in a living room in the suburbs. His mom, Tina, had clapped her hands together and asked if we had any big news to share. His dad had nodded solemnly when Ryan explained how his boss was grooming him for senior management. I had stared down at my fork and wondered how much longer I could stomach the charade. The text from Cody saying, "I'm on my way," buzzed against my thigh like a promise. The beginning of the story is less dramatic but no less real. I was 26, managing a retail store in the mall, and I honestly believed I had stumbled into something special when my best friend Vanessa introduced me to Ryan. He was taller than me, with an easy smile and the kind of confidence that made me feel seen. We met for coffee at a little shop downtown, and he launched into a story about his latest marketing campaign, his boss's endless praise, and his dreams of traveling for work. I asked questions. He answered with smooth charm and occasional humility. When he reached across the table and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear, I felt like I might have stepped into someone else's rom-com. Ryan had that effect. He made mundane moments feel extraordinary. Looking back now, I realize how much of that magic was smoke and mirrors. Our first year together was a mix of Netflix marathons, awkward dinners with both families, and inside jokes about our failed couples yoga class. We fell into a routine of Friday pizza nights and Sunday hikes, and somewhere in between paying bills and sharing Spotify playlists, I convinced myself he was the one. There were little annoyances, of course. His socks seemed magnetically drawn to every corner of my apartment. He texted through movies and then asked me to catch him up, and he offered helpful comments about my appearance that always stung more than they should. "That shirt makes your arms look bigger," he would say, or, "Have you thought about trying a different hairstyle?" I used to laugh these off as his way of being honest. I told myself it was refreshing to date a man who wasn't afraid to speak his mind. In reality, I was training myself to accept casual cruelty as love. Looking back, I can pinpoint the first crack in our foundation. It was a Saturday morning, early in our relationship, and Ryan was pacing my living room with his phone pressed to his ear. He kept saying, "I'll have the slides ready for the big pitch, don't worry," and, "Yes, I'll run the meeting, no problem." He ended the call with an exaggerated sigh and collapsed onto the couch beside me. "It never stops," he groaned. "They rely on me for everything." I smiled and rubbed his shoulder, proud of my hardworking boyfriend. Later, when I scrolled through Instagram, I saw him tagged in a post from one of his coworkers at a coffee shop with the caption "Office Assistant Life." Ryan was in the background, carrying a tray of coffee cups, and I remember thinking it was a funny coincidence. The truth, which I wouldn't learn until much later, was that he wasn't running the meeting. He was literally running to Starbucks to get the team's order. We celebrated our 1-year anniversary with a weekend trip to the lake. Ryan insisted on booking an overpriced cabin and posted pictures of the fireplace like he owned the place. "Anything for my girl," he said when he handed me a bottle of cheap champagne he'd poured into a crystal flute he insisted we pack. We spent the evening roasting marshmallows and talking about our future. "Maybe we should move in together this summer," he said casually, flicking a marshmallow that had caught fire. "Get a bigger place so I can have a home office." The idea made me nervous and excited. I had never lived with a significant other before, but the thought of waking up next to him every morning felt right. I didn't realize then that he would never follow through, that moving in together would remain a fantasy he dangled in front of me like a carrot. I don't think I noticed how often Ryan misrepresented himself until he invited me to join him for dinner with his work friends Leonard and Pablo. "It's just boys' night," he texted, "but you should come, it'll be fun." I took the invitation as a sign that we were graduating into a new level of our relationship, that he was ready to merge his professional and personal lives. I spent hours getting ready, following a YouTube tutorial to perfect winged eyeliner, straightening my hair with the expensive iron I rarely used, and squeezing into a dark blue dress that made me feel elegant. When I arrived at the trendy restaurant downtown, Ryan barely looked up. He gave me a cursory "You're late." I was 2 minutes late thanks to the nightmare of parking, and when he finally glanced at my outfit, he said, "Oh, you wore that?" loud enough for the entire table to hear. His friends exchanged a look, and my cheeks burned. I forced a laugh and asked if I'd missed a dress code memo. He shrugged and said they'd already ordered appetizers. The next hour was a blur of Ryan talking over me and explaining why I was wrong about things I knew intimately. When I mentioned a customer interaction from my store, he waved his hand dismissively and said, "She doesn't get how things work in the real business world." Leonard and Pablo chuckled. I ground my teeth. I had been managing my store for 3 years. Yet there I was, being told that retail wasn't a real job. When Leonard asked how we met, I began telling the story of how Vanessa, a mutual friend from college, introduced us. Ryan cut me off, laughing. Yeah, Vanessa felt bad for her. I was doing a favor. The air left my lungs. The truth was that Vanessa had warned me about Ryan's ego before setting us up, but said he was a good guy underneath it all. I excused myself to the bathroom, texting Vanessa from a stall with tears threatening to spill. In my absence, Ryan tagged himself in a photo at the restaurant on Instagram with the caption "Boys Night Out," as if I didn't exist. When the waiter placed our hot race in front of us, Ryan decided to comment on my order. Carbs? Bold choice for someone with your body type, he remarked, laughing. Each comment felt like a paper cut, adding up until I couldn't feel anything but the sting. He told them about a presentation he'd supposedly nailed at work, bragging that his boss loved his ideas and that he was essentially running the project now. My ears pricked up. The week before, I'd sat beside him on his couch, watching him wring his hands over being given only 5 minutes to speak in someone else's presentation. Now he was the star of the show. It was as if we were living in parallel universes. Something wasn't adding up. The bill came. The total, $347, was slid toward me. You know what, Ryan said, leaning back in his chair with a practiced sigh, I don't think this is working. For a moment I thought he meant the bill had been miscalculated. I stared at him waiting. He clarified, I've been trying to make this work, but I'm just not attracted to you anymore. We should break up. I laughed nervously, waiting for the punchline. This was not the kind of conversation one has in front of Leonard and Pablo and half a dozen strangers. He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and said louder, A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you this long. You're not exactly a prize. Then he walked out with his friends, leaving me, his girlfriend of 2 years, to pay for his expensive meal. I sat there, face burning, eyes stinging, staring at the $347 like it was a report card telling me I had failed at love. The waiter gave me a look of pity that hurt more than Ryan's words. I fumbled for my credit card, swiped it, signed my name with shaking hands, and stumbled out to my car. The night air was cold, and the parking lot was empty. I dialed Vanessa as soon as I slid behind the wheel. She answered on the first ring, and I sobbed into the phone, words tumbling out in a garbled mess. She arrived at my apartment within an hour, armed with a pint of Ben & Jerry's and a bottle of red wine. We sat cross-legged on my couch, eating ice cream straight from the container and alternating between crying and laughing at the absurdity of it all. Vanessa was livid. Who does that? She kept asking. Who humiliates someone like that? She wanted to drive to Ryan's apartment and pour his protein powder down the sink. I had to talk her out of it. It was during that late-night debrief with Vanessa that the truth began to unravel. Vanessa asked about the stories Ryan had told at dinner, the promotions, the projects, the big meeting he claimed to run. Her brow furrowed with each detail. Sabrina, she finally said, using my full name like she always did when she was serious. Ryan isn't who he says he is at work. He doesn't have a team. He doesn't lead projects. He gets coffee. At first, I couldn't process the words. I laughed it off. Then she pulled up LinkedIn and showed me Ryan's profile, where he claimed to be a senior marketing strategist. She cross-referenced it with the company website. His name was nowhere near senior management. My stomach nodded. If he could lie about his job, what else had he lied about? Those business trips he took, the fancy title, the company card he flashed, all fiction. The life I thought we were building was a script he'd written. That night, after Vanessa left, I went into detective mode. I scrolled through our text history, examining each conversation through a new lens. The times he'd said he was working late, but his phone location showed him across town. The client dinners, when he'd posted pictures of cocktails at bars I recognized as being near his old college. I found photos he'd claimed were from conferences that turned out to be stock images from the company's website. My heart raced with each discovery. I couldn't sleep. I kept playing the restaurant scene over and over in my head, the look on Leonard's face, the sound of Ryan's voice calling me ungrateful, and I wondered how I had missed so many signs. Around 3 in the morning, as I stared at my ceiling fan and listened to my upstairs neighbor's cat run laps, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Hey, it's Cody from Ryan's office. Vanessa gave me your number. There's some stuff you should know. At first, I assumed it was a sick joke. Then I remembered Vanessa mentioning a coworker named Cody who had always looked out for her. I texted back cautiously, and Cody responded with a flurry of information that left me spinning. Ryan wasn't just an assistant. He was on probation. He had been taking credit for other people's work, faking emails from clients, and might soon be fired. He had told his coworkers that he dumped me because I was clingy and obsessed with marriage, painting himself as the victim. He'd made up entire stories about me being high maintenance to justify why he rarely took me out. The world I thought I shared with him was built on sand. The days after the breakup were a blur of crying jags, ice cream binges, and messy text exchanges with friends. I alternated between wanting to block Ryan on everything and wanting to send him a novel-length message listing each and every lie he'd told. I avoided social media, not because I didn't want to see his posts, but because I knew he'd twist the narrative. When I finally caved and opened Instagram, there he was, a gym selfie captioned, "Level up, know your worth." My stomach flipped. The audacity of a man who had belittled me to tell his followers to know their worth was almost funny. Vanessa came over with takeout and forced me to watch trashy reality TV until I fell asleep with my face smeared in mascara and soy sauce stains on my shirt. Meanwhile, Cody and I started talking more. He sent me screenshots of texts Ryan had sent to coworkers, painting me as a nag who wouldn't stop pressuring him to propose. He told me about the time Ryan took credit for his idea during a meeting, only to trip over the details because he hadn't actually done the work. Cody was careful not to gossip. He seemed genuinely concerned for me, as if he couldn't reconcile the image of the Ryan he knew at work with the Ryan I described. He offered to meet up and show me the evidence in person. A part of me hesitated. What good would it do to see more proof of Ryan's deceit? But another part, the part that had paid $347 to be dumped, craved closure. On Wednesday, as the world whirled by outside my apartment and my sink piled up with dishes, Tina, Ryan's mother, called me. She had always been kind, remembering my birthday and sending me homemade cookies on holidays. I almost didn't answer. I wasn't sure how to handle the conversation. But something in her voicemail, the worry in her voice, made me pick up. "Hi, sweetheart," she said. "Is everything okay between you and Ryan? He said you had a little fight, but I know how dramatic he can be." My mouth went dry. I told her, in the vaguest terms possible, that we were taking some space. She mentioned Ryan's upcoming birthday dinner at their house on Saturday, and how excited everyone was to see me. "Ryan said you have big news," she chirped. I blinked at the phone. Big news? Had he told them we were engaged? Moving in together? My skin crawled. After I hung up, I sat on my couch staring at a pile of laundry, trying to make sense of it all. Vanessa, who had been folding towels at my kitchen table, looked at me over the top of a stack of t-shirts. Did he really tell his family we're still together and that we have big news? I asked. She nodded slowly. We both burst out laughing, not because it was funny but because it was so absurd it bordered on parody. For a moment, I considered ghosting his family. They didn't deserve to be dragged into his web of lies. But then I thought about his mom's kindness, his sister's skeptical eyebrow raise whenever he bragged, and his grandmother's blunt comments that always made me smile. They deserved the truth. Vanessa agreed. "You don't have to go guns blazing," she said, "but maybe letting them see who he really is isn't the worst idea." The plan came together over cold noodles and fortune cookies. Cody and I met for coffee the next afternoon. He was taller than I'd imagined, with kind eyes and a nervous smile. We sat at a small table near the window, the smell of espresso and baked goods hugging us. He slid a manila folder across the table. "I feel like I'm doing some kind of spy drop," he joked. Inside were printed emails, meeting agendas, and his own notes. They painted a picture of someone who constantly exaggerated his role, took credit where it wasn't due, and fabricated entire presentations. He told me he was practically running the marketing department, I said, flipping through the papers. He told me he just made coffee runs, Cody admitted. We both laughed. It felt surreal to be sitting across from a near stranger bonding over the shared experience of being deceived by the same man. While we were finishing our iced lattes, Cody got a text from his boss asking if he could drop off some documents Saturday evening. I glanced at the calendar. That was the night of Ryan's birthday dinner. Wouldn't it be convenient, I mused, if you had to drop those off at his parents' house? Cody looked at me, eyes widening as he realized what I was suggesting. He hesitated for a moment. This was beyond office gossip. But something about the thought of Ryan spinning more lies while his family smiled and nodded made Cody nod. "I'll come by during the dinner," he agreed. "I won't let him lie about you anymore." My nerves kicked in as the day approached. I spent Friday night with Vanessa, trying on outfits and practicing what I might say. Part of me wanted to show up in a dress that screamed revenge body, but Vanessa reminded me that authenticity would have a bigger impact than glamour. We settled on a simple black dress, the one Ryan once said made me look average, because he claimed he liked me natural. I paired it with a necklace my grandmother had given me, and a pair of heels that made me feel steady. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face at the restaurant, heard his words, "A girl like you should be grateful," echoing in my skull. Saturday arrived with the kind of crisp blue sky that always made me itch to be outside. I paced my apartment, alternating between deep breathing and picking at my cuticles. Vanessa arrived with a Starbucks and a pep talk. "You don't owe him anything," she reminded me as she curled my hair. "You're doing this for you." At 5:30, I slid into my car. My hands were shaking so badly that I had to pull over halfway to the suburbs to practice the breathing exercises that a meditation app had taught me months earlier, but I had never taken seriously. The drive felt endless. When I finally turned onto the tree-lined street where his parents lived, I almost turned around. But then I pictured Ryan telling his family we were engaged, or that I had cheated on him, or any number of lies, and my spine straightened. I arrived 15 minutes late, fashionably, intentionally. Ryan's dad opened the door with a smile and a hug, ushering me in. The house smelled like pot roast, and warmth enveloped me. For a second, nostalgia hit. I remembered birthdays past, Sunday dinners, his mom's gentle hand on my shoulder when I'd been nervous to meet his extended family. I pushed the sadness aside and stepped into the living room. Ryan stood near the fireplace, drink in hand, laughing at something his cousin said. When he saw me, his face froze, then melted into a forced smile. He walked over, gave me a stiff hug and whispered, "You actually came? We need to talk privately." I smiled brightly and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I wouldn't miss your birthday for anything, especially since you have big news to share." His mom squealed with excitement. His sister, Kayla, arched a brow. Ryan's hand tightened on my elbow. I took my seat at the table. The first 20 minutes were almost painfully awkward. Ryan dominated the conversation, weaving more stories about his successes and ignoring the subtle glances his sister sent my way. His grandmother asked when we were moving in together. "Ryan said you were apartment hunting," she exclaimed. I choked on my water. He stammered something about timing. Then his dad asked about a big account Ryan had told him he was leading. Ryan responded with vague buzzwords about synergy and metrics, stringing together corporate jargon like he'd swallowed a management textbook. Kayla rolled her eyes. I could feel the tension building like a storm cloud. When Tina brought up his promotion, I almost laughed. She said she was so proud of her son for becoming senior marketing strategist, and she was sure he'd be running the department before 30. Ryan puffed out his chest and nodded. I kept my gaze trained on my mashed potatoes. Kayla cleared her throat and said, "Which team are you managing exactly?" before shoving a bite of green beans into her mouth. Ryan deflected with a joke about her dating life. For a moment, I considered letting it go. Then I felt my phone buzz. On my way, 15 minutes, Cody texted. My fingers tingled with adrenaline. I set down my fork, smiled sweetly, and said, "Speaking of dinners, Ryan took me to this incredible restaurant last week." Ryan's face went pale. "What was it called again?" I mused. "Oh, right, the one where you met up with Leonard and Pablo." It was so fancy. The bill was, what was it? Oh yes, $347. I let the number hang in the air. The conversation quieted. Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, the doorbell rang. Tina jumped up to answer it. The timing was almost cinematic. Tina re-entered the dining room with Cody trailing behind, his cheeks flushed from the autumn chill. "Cody, what a surprise," she said. "Come join us for cake." Ryan shot up, blocking Cody's path. "We can handle work stuff later," he muttered. Ralph, Ryan's dad, looked at his son with a mix of confusion and patience. "If it's important, handle it now," he insisted. "We're all family here." Cody met my eyes for a split second, then sat beside me. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the folder he'd brought. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but these documents needed to be signed before Monday," he said politely. Ralph, curious, glanced at the top sheet. "This is about the presentation last month?" he asked. "The one Ryan led?" Cody hesitated. He looked at Ryan, then at me. I nodded, giving him silent permission. "Actually," Cody said carefully, "our boss delivered the presentation." Ryan operated the slideshow. The room fell silent. You could have heard the clock ticking in the living room. Tina's eyes darted between her son and the young man at her table. Ralph put down his napkin. "But Ryan told me he presented the deck and landed the Johnson account," he said slowly. "He didn't." Cody shook his head. Ryan's jaw tightened. "That's not exactly how it went," Ryan barked, but Kayla cut him off. "What is your current title, Ryan?" she asked. "Tell Grandma again." Cody spoke before Ryan could fabricate another story. "He's an administrative assistant," he said quietly. Ryan slammed his fist on the table. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. Cody's confused. "My role is complex." But the dam had broken. Ralph began asking specific questions. Which clients did he manage? None. Where was his corner office? It didn't exist. When did he get promoted? He hadn't. His stories unraveled like old yarn. Each answer dug him deeper. The color drained from his face. I could have sat back and watched, but I realized this was my moment to tell my truth. I cleared my throat and said, "Since we're discussing honesty, I think you should all know what happened at that restaurant Ryan took me to last week." Ryan jumped to his feet, pointing at me. "Don't do this," he whispered. Ralph shot him a look that told him to sit. I inhaled, steadying my voice. Ryan invited me to meet his work friends. He spent the entire dinner making fun of me, belittling my job, and then he dumped me in front of everyone and left me with a $347 bill. Tina gasped. Kayla's mouth dropped open. His grandmother clucked her tongue. Ryan shouted that I was lying, that I was making him look bad. Cody pulled out his phone and read aloud a text from Pablo. "Bro, that was savage. I can't believe you made Sabrina pay." The truth hung heavy in the room. The scene escalated quickly. Ryan called Cody a traitor, accused me of being manipulative, and insisted his lies were justified because I had embarrassed him by not fitting in with his colleagues. I was teaching her financial responsibility, he claimed when his dad questioned why he'd left me the bill. His grandmother snorted. Kayla shook her head, muttering, "Unbelievable." Tina's eyes filled with tears. She apologized to me repeatedly, her voice trembling. "I had no idea," she whispered. "We had no idea." Ryan continued to unravel. He knocked over his water glass, pointed a shaking finger at me, and hissed, "A girl like you should be grateful." The words cut through me, and yet, hearing them in front of his family diffused their power. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard that one of Tina's decorative plates fell and cracked. The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, no one spoke. We all stared at our plates, at the spills spreading across the tablecloth, at the crumbs of cake that seemed trivial in the wake of his outburst. Then something remarkable happened. Instead of asking me to leave, instead of blaming me for causing drama, Ryan's family rallied around me. Tina brought out the birthday cake, chocolate with blue frosting, and insisted I stay for a slice. Kayla poured me another glass of wine. Ralph apologized for his son's behavior and said they needed to reflect on where they'd gone wrong. Cody patted my hand under the table and whispered, "You did the right thing." We sat there, Ryan's ex-girlfriend, his family, and his coworker, eating cake and passing napkins, united by our shared disbelief. After dinner, I helped Tina wash dishes while Kayla stacked leftovers into Tupperware. Tina's hands shook as she scrubbed a pan. "I don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "We raised him better than this. We taught him to tell the truth." I didn't know what to say. I felt empathy for her. I had loved a version of Ryan that clearly existed only in my imagination. There were red flags, I admitted. I ignored them because I wanted to believe in him. Kayla, standing at the kitchen island drying plates, chimed in. "He lied about little things even when we were kids. Like claiming he was playing varsity baseball when he'd been cut from the team." Tina sighed. "Maybe we didn't want to see it." When I finally left, Cody walked me to my car. The air was crisp, and our breath puffed in little clouds. "That was intense," he said, letting out a low whistle. I nodded, my adrenaline slowly ebbing. "Thank you for backing me up," I said. He shrugged. "He's been lying for a long time. It was bound to catch up with him. I just didn't expect it to be at his own birthday dinner." I laughed, the sound surprising me. He glanced at me and smiled. "If you ever need anything, well, except for a presentation, clearly I'm not the slideshow guy, let me know," he said. We exchanged numbers, this time because we wanted to, not because of Ryan's chaos. That night, as I collapsed onto my couch, mascara smeared and heels discarded, I felt an odd mixture of exhaustion and relief. I had confronted him, told the truth, and survived. I thought that was the end of it. I underestimated Ryan's capacity for self-destruction. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a flurry of calls. 13 missed calls from Tina, Kayla, and Cody, each leaving voicemails that crescendoed in urgency. My stomach lurched. Had something happened? Had Ryan hurt himself? I called Tina first. She answered on the first ring, voice strained. "I'm so sorry," she blurted. "Ryan lost it after you left. He went on a bender, showed up at his ex-girlfriend's at 2 in the morning, posted your address online, threatened Cody. We've been trying to reach you. Are you okay?" I stared at my wall, half expecting to see my own life projected like a movie. Ryan had always been dramatic, but this was beyond anything I'd imagined. According to Tina, he had sent unhinged messages to coworkers, posted a long rant on Facebook about snakes and betrayals, and threatened to make me pay. My throat tightened. Vanessa, who had crashed on my couch the night before, sat up bleary-eyed and took in my panicked expression. I relayed Tina's words. Vanessa grabbed her keys. "We're not doing this," she declared. "He's not going to scare you." Moments later, the doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole. It was Kayla and Tina, holding coffee and pastries, their faces etched with worry. They came in, hugging me as if I were family, apologizing over and over for Ryan's behavior. "We're not here because of him," Kayla said. "We're here because we care about you." Cody arrived shortly after, his expression serious. He explained that Ryan had threatened him too, vowing to ruin his career. "It's laughable," Cody said, shaking his head. "He's on probation. He might not even have a job on Monday." We all sat in my living room, sipping coffee and trying to make sense of the situation. My phone buzzed again. Ryan had tagged me in an Instagram story. Against everyone's advice, I opened it. It was a photo of me asleep on his couch from 2 years ago. Mouth open, captioned, "Miss Perfect who ruined my birthday isn't so perfect." I laughed. Of all the things he could have done, posting an unflattering picture of me drooling in my sleep felt almost pathetic. Our laughter died when the pounding on my door began. Ryan's voice slurred from the hallway. "I know you're in there. Open the door." Vanessa stood up, fists clenched. Cody motioned for her to sit. Kayla peeked through the peephole and backed away, whispering, "He's drunk." My heart hammered. I dialed building security. The guard arrived quickly, a blessing of renting in a building that charged for every amenity. He told Ryan to leave or the police would be called. Ryan cursed, threatened to sue, then stumbled away. Tina winced. Kayla apologized again. I felt something loosen inside my chest. I was no longer alone in dealing with his volatility. I had witnesses, allies, and the strength of my own voice. Ryan didn't stop immediately. Over the next few weeks, he sent tearful voicemails one moment and rage-filled texts the next. He posted vague status updates about betrayal and snakes. He created fake Instagram accounts to message me, each one more obvious than the last. "You're making a big mistake," he wrote from an account called Marketer Minix. I blocked him, each time feeling lighter. He failed to show up for work for 3 days, sent unprofessional emails to his boss, and was fired. He moved back in with his parents temporarily. According to Kayla, he spent his days sleeping and his nights playing video games in the basement. "They finally cut him off financially," she said over coffee. "My parents told him to get therapy. I don't know if he will." I saw him once more in person. It was a month later at Target. I was in the home goods aisle, debating between shower curtains, when I sensed someone staring. I looked up and saw him, hair unkempt, dark circles under his eyes, clutching a pack of socks like a lifeline. For a split second, our eyes met. I held his gaze, waiting to see if he would apologize, accuse me, or ask me back. Instead, he dropped the socks and turned, walking away without a word. Watching him retreat down the aisle, I felt a wave of sadness, not for the loss of him, but for the loss of the illusion I had nurtured. The Ryan I had loved existed only in my memories and his lies. In the months that followed, life slowly returned to something resembling normal. I rearranged my apartment, moving the couch to the opposite wall and hanging new art. I canceled his Netflix profile and deleted our shared playlists. Vanessa and I celebrated my freedom with a spa day, and she surprised me with a breakup cake decorated with the words, "Know your worth." I went to therapy and unpacked why I'd ignored red flags, why I'd believed his barbs were compliments, why the words, "a girl like you," had made me shrink. I learned that I didn't need to be grateful for crumbs of affection or settle for someone who dimmed my light to make himself look brighter. Strangely enough, one of the most unexpected gifts to come out of the chaos was my friendship with Cody. We bonded over our shared experience, texting each other memes about office coffee runs and commiserating over our mutual trust issues. Vanessa joked about us dating, but we both knew we weren't ready for anything more than friendship. It was nice, though, to have someone who had witnessed the wreckage, who didn't question my story, who never once implied that I was overreacting. Together, we learned to laugh at the absurdity of the situation. "Imagine telling this to a stranger," he said once. "They'd think we were making it up." When I look back now, several years removed from the chaos, I am not angry so much as grateful. Grateful to Vanessa for showing up with ice cream and wine. Grateful to Kayla and Tina for choosing empathy over defensiveness. Grateful to Cody for his courage in speaking up. Grateful to myself for finding the strength to walk into that dining room and speak the truth. I am grateful that I learned, before signing a lease or changing my last name, that love built on lies is not love at all. I have learned to set boundaries, to trust my gut, to call out cruelty disguised as honesty. And I have learned that I am worth far more than a seat at a table with men who make jokes at my expense. A girl like me isn't grateful that someone dated her. A girl like me is grateful that she learned to choose herself.